Wingardium Leviosa. Oh, hi, I'm Hermione. I don't suppose you've seen two boys hanging around, have you? Harry and Ron. I've lost them. But while I was looking in the library, I found this really interesting book. Would you like to listen to it with me? Fantastic. It's called Arthur and the Golden Rope, and it's written by Joe Todd Stanton. Hello, dear reader, and welcome to the Brownstone Family Vault. Within this room lie artifacts of great power and rarity, collected over thousands of years from every corner of the globe. My most treasured possession is actually the humble collection of books. They contain tales of lands and creatures long forgotten, as told by the people who collected these amazing objects, my ancestors. They include such adventures as Eleanor Brownstone's discovery of the Crystal Kingdom and her subsequent death-defying escape. My great-great-grandfather, Eric Brownstone's epic battle with the 100-headed snake, king of Tuckanuck Island. 100-headed snake. I think even Dumbledore might struggle with that one. But before all that, there was the first adventure a Brownstone ever had. This is the tale of Arthur, the unlikeliest of heroes. Born long ago in a small Icelandic town, it was clear from an early age that Arthur was going to be a bit different. As soon as he was old enough to explore the forest, he showed a great interest in the strange creatures that lived there. At night, while the townsfolk would rather gather round the safety of the great fire, Arthur would sit and listen to Attwell, the town's wise woman. She would tell him wondrous and frightening tales about distant lands and ancient magic. Arthur soon began to journey into the forest in search of adventures. He even started to carry with him some of the more unusual items he had found. For returning her egg, the mighty bird Windweaver gave him a special feather that would grant him help at a time of need. And by putting an end to the great, or rather tiny, war between goblins and fairies, he was given an enchanted staff. High in an ancient tower, he discovered the Hand of Time, which held the power to freeze anyone who touched it. And Datrix gave him this very journal I am reading from, after the most dangerous challenge of all. What do you think it is? Rescuing her cat from a tree. That is quite dangerous, to be fair. One day, while Arthur was attempting to track down a rare species of magical worm, he was startled by a terrible howl. A moment later, he was plunged into darkness as a huge black shape bounded over him and disappeared. Arthur quickly clambered up the nearest tree and poked his head over the top of the canopy. Right there, heading straight for his town, was a monstrous black wolf. He could only watch in horror as the wolf put out the great fire before it leapt back into the darkness of the forest. Wow, scary looking wolf. Arthur hurried back to the town and felt the cold closing on him. The final embers of the great fire were dying, and everyone was huddled together as Attwell began to talk. Without the great fire warming our town, Every house will be frozen solid in less than a week, Atrix warned. And all of us soon after. The townsfolk gasped in fear. But wait, there is a way we can be saved. Across the sea lies the land of the Viking gods. In a mighty hall on top of a mountain, there lives a god with a hammer that can command the skies. He alone has the power to relight our fire. A god with a hammer. Can you think of a god that has a hammer? As the townfolk looked around, they realised a slight problem with this plan. Everyone had been injured by the wolf, from their toughest warriors to their doughiest bakers. There was no one to send. Arthur's not hurt, piped up one of his classmates. I wouldn't be surprised if all his meddling brought the beast to us all in the first place. He's much too small. He wouldn't last 2 seconds in the land of the gods. And the only reason he has remained unhurt is because he spends all of his time in the forest with those demons. Yeah, he's just a no-good meddler. Oh, poor Arthur. How do you think he's feeling after all those comments? Doesn't look very happy, does he? That night, Arthur lay wide awake, the harsh words of the townsfolk running through his head. Maybe he was a meddler and had led the wolf straight to the town. Taking a deep breath, Arthur decided that he must go and find the god of storms. Packing up his most useful possessions, he climbed out of his bedroom window and headed for the harbour. He'd had many adventures in the forest. How much harder could this be? And you remember what some of those possessions were that he's going to take with him. They might come in useful, do you think? And here is his journey. It's a very long journey by the looks of it. And I don't think he had a flying car like Ron and Harry do. Or a broomstick. After a long journey, Arthur finally reached the great hall. The powerful doors swung open and a voice boomed. Welcome, young traveller. I am Thor, god of sky and thunder. Thor, that was the god with the hammer. The warrior god listened intently as Arthur recounted the fate of his town. At last, he nodded gravely. The wolf is Fenrir, son of the evil god Loki, and he has ravaged many villages over the past years. I will relight your great fire, but only under one condition. You must help me capture the beast, said Thor. Arthur could only tremble in his boots as Thor explained how the gods had already failed to trap the wolf. Wow, it sounds like it's a big task at hand. Fenrir had nearly squished Freya, the goddess of love, while she had tried to cast a spell. Then there was Baldra, the god of justice, who had only just escaped from the jaws of the beast despite his amazing strength. And Thor's own brother, Tyra, had his hand bitten off when he tried to outwit the wolf. The only way to stop Fenrir is with a rope made from 2 incredibly rare items: the sound of a cat's footfall and the roots of a mountain, said Thor. And by the looks of things, you have collected many strange things already. Before Arthur could refuse, Thor handed him 2 glass bottles and sent him on his way. If Arthur was to catch the sound of a cat's footfall, he would have to find a very big cat. He remembered Atrix's tale of a serpent who could turn into a colossal cat so large that Thor himself could not lift it. As you can imagine, it was not too hard to find. Arthur only knew one way to make such a big cat jump. What do you think? That's it. Poke it with a stick. A gigantic boom echoed around the valley as the beast's huge paws hit the floor. Arthur held on tight to Thor's jar and captured as much of the sound as possible before making a quick getaway. That's a very big cat. For his second challenge, Arthur was truly stumped. He had heard of a huge library with the God's Hall. Perhaps he could find something useful there. He searched for an entire day and night, but found nothing. It was only when reading the last book from the very last shelf that an ancient piece of parchment fell out. I wonder what it is. There's a big library. Not quite as big as Hogwarts, though. It was an old map of the Norse world. It showed the realms of the gods, the humans, and the giants, and connecting them all was a great tree, the huge mountainous world tree. Arthur thought to himself that was it. The world tree was the mountain with roots. It looked much bigger in real life. But with no time to waste, and legs as sturdy as 2 cooked noodles, Arthur began the climb. And he climbs, and he climbs, and he climbs, until he got to the top, and he hung off of these tiny roots. But then one of them snapped, and he fell. But can you see who rescued him? Huh? The Windweaver. Just as Arthur thought he was in the greatest peril, Windweaver swoops down and caught him in her talons. She carried Arthur all the way back to the God's Hall, where he triumphantly handed both glass jars to Thor. Odin, the father of the gods, appeared and emptied the jars into a giant cauldron. With a sudden flash of light, a huge golden rope began to rise, winding its way up through the air. Thor tied the golden rope to his belt and turned to Arthur. You are truly a brave young adventurer, but you still have one challenge left. You must distract the wolf just long enough for me to tie him up. Then I can save your town. Arthur nodded solemnly, but quivered with fear as he looked at Thor's one-handed brother. What would happen to him if he confronted the beast? He would have to come up with a plan, and quickly. The path of Fenrir's destruction was clear to see. It tore through the forest and stopped right outside a small village. The group slowly descended and looked around for a sign of life when Arthur spotted something. Could you see what it was? It was a trap. A loud roar erupted from the forest as the most terrifying of creatures appeared. Arthur looked on, feeling impossibly small and helpless, and then he saw the beast right behind him. In fear, Arthur ran as fast as he could into the forest to hide. No. Fenrir's powerful nose quickly sniffed Arthur out, and a gigantic claw began to creep closer and closer. In that moment, Arthur was struck with an idea. He jumped up, ready to bash the wolf on its nose. Do you know what his idea is? Let's find out. But Fenrir was too quick. With a loud crunch, he bit Arthur's hand straight off. Oh no, poor Arthur. And then Arthur pulled out his real hands. Fenrir had been tricked. The huge beast had bitten the hand of time and swallowed it whole. His whole body froze in an instant, except for his eyes, which blinked in confusion. After defeating Fenrir's minions, Thor was able to tie Fenrir up, while Arthur beamed with pride. As they flew back to Arthur's frozen town, a bolt of lightning crashed down from the clouds into the main square. The great fire burst into life, and the ice began to melt again. The townsfolk cheered and gathered around to hear Thor speak. Arthur went quietly over to Atrix with his journal full of the adventures and creatures he had seen. When Thor explained that it was actually Arthur who had defeated Fenrir, they all went to celebrate with him. But by then, he was already fast asleep. To be fair, it was a long day, wasn't it? Busy day. And that is the tale of the very first brownstone. Maybe one day you will hear some more of my ancestors' adventures, but until then, dear reader, I hope you go out and find some of your own, because sometimes the greatest heroes are the unlikeliest. Thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please make sure you go and listen to some of the other stories that the teachers are reading today, and have a great World Book Day.